The father of German Expressionism and one of the influential precursors of film noir, Fritz Lang left behind a creative library of work, dripping in pessimism, that uncovers, as he witnessed it, the destructive nature of society. Born in Vienna in 1980, Lang found himself writing screenplays after recovering from his injuries in World War I, both physically and mentally. After taking the mantle of director, Lang refined what would become as his trademark style of dark, powerful visuals and themes of violence, corruption, madness, and justice. Throughout many of Fritz Lang's films, at the core lies a strong emphasis on the representations of civilization, society, and strict judgment, which alludes to deconstructive understandings into the binaries of lawbreaker and lawmaker, good and evil, citizen and psychopath, and authority and criminal. Lang's Last But One film and original sound picture M shows this internal struggle of a city focused around the search for a child killer, an unpopular topic even by today's standards. Influenced by the emotional scarring of World War I, the dark, ominous window into the destructive elements of the human soul and body were explored not just thematically, but visually as well, through the intense use of sharp angles and light and shadow, transforming the set into a character itself. The film begins by portraying an environment which could only appear as one of civilian stability and peace. While their mothers are inside, cleaning and preparing the house for lunch, children play outside. Lang displays montages of social stability and routine life on the surface of the city. However, beneath these manifestations of harmony, Lang creates disturbances which attribute ominous undertones towards this scene. Visually, Lang applied his range of expressionist techniques with theatrical uses of shadows, specifically when Law's shadow is cast on a wanted poster, and a vast range of sharp camera angles. The camera movement in the film was exceptional, sometimes having multiple shots running through entire rooms bursting with action.
Mensch, schnarch nicht so, du wächst leise.
In Elsie Beckman's murder sequence, a wide shot of a school is used, showing children getting out of school and parents waiting eagerly. Elsie Beckman leaves the school grounds and walks home by herself, while Lang seamlessly intercuts visuals between Elsie's journey home, with her mother washing her clothes, preparing food, and setting her plate for dinner. As Elsie continues through the streets, Lang isolates her from the industrialized environment. She traverses past threats of anonymous strangers and oncoming vehicles. The city itself seeks to expel Elsie from it. I think what Fritz Lang does to create such vivid and shocking films is reflected through his experience of World War I, and how devastating society and humans can be. He presents this to the viewer in its raw form, exploring the destructive elements of the human soul and body through the use of sharp angles and light and shadow, transforming the city into a character itself, a vehicle of corruption and violence. The film Metropolis was filmed in the era of 1920s Germany, a dark time for the country itself. Let me share some context with you all. You see, Germany was economically annihilated after a draining defeat in World War I, and during this time, Hitler took the opportunity to begin his rise to power, whilst also convincing many of the citizens that Jews were to blame for their poor economic state. Fritz Lang's mother was a Jewish woman, so by Nazi standards he was considered a half-breed. Due to the ideals woven throughout his childhood from his mother of the importance of protecting heritage and the discriminatory views of the wider German population, we can conclude that Fritz Lang was very much against the Nazi regime. Through the direction and cinematic techniques of his film Metropolis, it is clear that he is making a comment on the contemporary state of economic and working life in German society. It is clear that Fritz Lang wanted to showcase the loss of humanity within Germany, through his employment of certain camera techniques and colouring. The contrast of black and white colouring and uniforms are effectively used to showcase the feelings of workers and citizens of Metropolis. Black representing sorrow and pain, whereas white represents a society filled with hope and aspiration. Both sets of these societal representations deal with similar repercussions, however. Despite being on opposite ends of the social order, they are both slaves to technological advancements. In terms of shot composition, Lang shoots the scenes with the robotic workers moving in unison without movement. The camera has no interest in focusing on any single one of them, adding to the theme of the loss of humanity by making them seem like a part of the machine. This directly contrasts with Lang's direction of the non-workers of German society, showcasing the maintenance of their own humanity through movements of the camera in time with the characters' movements. A particularly important film in Fritz Lang's catalogue that tends to go under the radar is none other than his science fiction film Woman in the Moon. Originally known as Die Frau ein Mond, it was Lang's last silent film and is considered by many to be the first to ever depict space travel in both possible and a realistic way. Although this film was widely influential for other classics such as Star Wars and even the earlier 2001 A Space Odyssey, it was also extremely ambitious and incredibly pricey for the studio at the time. Realistically, detailing a trip to the moon is something that would have been relatively unheard of in cinema of the 1920s, so Lang's goal to achieve this certainly would have frightened studio executives at the time due to the obvious budgetary limitations. The film revolves around a tenacious scientist who hopes to be the first to land on the moon and exploit any riches and treasures that he may find there. Alongside this, the film features a plot about a criminal conspiracy and a gang of plutocrats, and also includes a sort of love triangle involving the main scientist and two of his assistants. Therefore, this helps to create a film that would be considered as accessible to a multitude of audiences, due to it essentially being a mix or blend of several different categories that people can enjoy or relate to. Other interesting influences this film had on cinema and society as a whole include it being the first film to convey a countdown from 10 to 0 when the rocket ship first launches, as well as having the rocket eject its first and second stage rockets when taking off, thus predicting this practice in real-life modern rockets. To say this film was ahead of its time is a massive understatement, due to the fact that so many elements of this realistic depiction of space travel eventually came true. The way Lang shoots the rocket takeoff sequence using a variety of wide shots really helped to capture the openness and emptiness of outer space, something that is a commonly used tactic in cinema of today, but would have been considered as groundbreaking for its time. Fritz Lang used all of these features together, which helped to create a film that truly inspired the future of science fiction. Throughout his films, Lang explores the world of German Expressionism in a post-war Germany. German Expressionism is an art movement that came to fruition in Berlin in the 1920s. The movement allowed artists to explore their ideas and feelings, as opposed to replicating reality. In art, it is marked by characteristics such as gestural marks and simplified shapes. In film, the movement often revealed itself in buildings of sharp angles, crowded environments, and the dramatic contrast of shadows. While the 1920s was the time for the rich materials and designs, post-war Art Deco leans more towards a rawness in design and away from cubist and avant-garde influences. Architecture of the 20s was a more real version of the style. With less materials available, concrete and exposed metals became the indicator of the style and explored the rawness and vulnerability of the isolated country. Lang's films are influenced by both the Art Deco style and German Expressionist movements, and used them to explore the industrialized Germany. Lang was considered to be one of the pioneers in special and visual effects in Germany, alongside effects specialist painter and architect Jürgen Schüften. Metropolis, especially, is considered to be one of the most quintessential films in special effects for its time. A number of techniques were used, from the construction of 2D and 3D miniatures to create the city, to over 1,000 detailed, hand-drawn cityscapes being created to simulate lights moving throughout the city backdrop. Other effects include camera swings and, most prominently, the Schüften process, this special effect technique that later evolved into green screens and CGI. A combination of mirrors and both 2D and 3D model scenery was used to create the illusion of actors being to scale in the largely scaled down miniature. A mirror would be placed at a 45-degree angle in relation to the camera. This mirror would reflect the set. A section of the mirror's surface would be scratched away, giving the camera unrestricted view of the moving scenery, for example, the actors. This technique is most notably used in the scenes with workers down in the underground city. This technique was used again just 2 years later in Alfred Hitchcock's Blackmail. From tales of a conflicted metropolis future to gritty mysteries, Fritz Lang is a prominent figure in early German cinema. His films, at the core, explore the representation of society. Each of these films explore a post-war Germany seen through the eyes of the German Expressionist movement. Each film is an emotional statement on Germany. Metropolis, with its look at what could have been, M and its depiction of current real life, and The Woman in the Moon's exploration into the future and what is to come.